With only one day left in Washington's seaweed foraging season, we make our way to the shore with baskets in hand. This time, I bring some friends along. They're curious and excited just as I am to see what the low tide might reveal. Back at home, I sort through the day's finds, drying each variety. And yes, I make seaweed butter. Brilliant or bizarre? Stay with me, we're about to find out. We are back out by the water for our last round of foraging seaweed for the season. Last time I was out here, that was 2 weeks ago. It's definitely colder today, it's windier, and the sun just started popping out. So now it's warming up a bit. There's a bunch of people out there foraging seaweed. Last time we were out here, the water went down to minus 2.7 feet. Today, it is going down to 1.9 feet. All right, so before we go out there, we're gonna weigh everything. This is a luggage scale. In Washington state, the daily limit is 10 pounds of wet seaweed per person. Now this basket, wait, it's so light it says it's 0 pounds. Oh, the waves are a little bigger today, it seems like. So here we have the winged kelp. In my previous outing, I harvested plenty of winged kelp. So this time, I'm on the search for other edible species of seaweed. This kind of might look like oil floating on water, but it's actually Splendid iridescent seaweed. We're cutting it above the plant base. That's all edible. The interesting thing about the iridescent one, once it's out of the water, it's not nearly as iridescent. And then the other species I'm going to be cutting today is the green lettuce. The sea lettuce seems to harmoniously grow next to the splendid iridescent seaweed. After all, they share similar habitat requirements. So right here, the sea lettuce. Oop. That's the sea lettuce, and that's the iridescent one. When you go to the Washington DNR website, they only talk about how to harvest 3 types of seaweed species. So I emailed them and I called them about other species like the sea lettuce and the iridescent seaweed. Like, how do you harvest those? They just said to leave the plant base, and then if there's not a lot of a species, then just leave that. But there's plenty of that green lettuce and splendid iridescent seaweed. No worries on harvesting some of those, you know? My friend came prepared. With waders on, she ventured deeper to gather winged kelp and bull kelp. So 2 Wednesdays ago when I came here, it was easier to access the nice winged kelp. The winged kelp that is closer to the rocks is more beaten up. Wow, look at all this green! It's sea lettuce. It feels so nice to run your fingers through it. Woo! That slapped. Careful! After about an hour of harvesting seaweed at a relaxing pace, our hearts are full. Here is our beachy bounty. Are you filming? Your Asian squat! I had to get it on camera. I dropped my scale out there on the water, so now it's not working. I know that if my basket reaches about halfway, that's about 5 pounds of wet seaweed. We were told by some harvesters that there is a ranger around the parking lot weighing all the seaweed. I'm gonna come back. So there were 2 rangers when we got back to the car, and my basket, they weighed it with the scale, each of our baskets. Mine ended up being 2.5 pounds with the basket. And then for you?
This was just over 5 pounds.
Yeah, with the basket was about 7 pounds.
Definitely less than 10 pounds, yeah.
We don't want to harvest too much because the more seaweed we get, the more we have to process. And that takes time, as we know from my previous video. All right, success! And now we're back at home. It is 8 p.m. So if it's a hot day out, you definitely want to bring some ice to make sure the seaweed stays fresh. Because if it's hot out and your trunk gets hot, seaweed can go bad. But today it was overcast. We didn't have to worry too much about that. And it wasn't a hot day. Although it was sunny at times, it wasn't hot. So I just checked the quality of the seaweed. It still is looking pretty good. Today I harvested the iridescent seaweed and the sea lettuce. So in my previous foraging video, I showed you how to process seaweed, so I'll speed this part along. I just cleaned a couple pieces of the seaweed and already found a critter. This one's alive. It's like scurrying in the bowl. It found a piece of seaweed and it's just clinging onto that now. For now, I put the little guy in a mason jar, put a piece of seaweed so it has something to cling on to. Added some bigger pieces to make it feel more at home. So the water that you rinse your seaweed in, there might be sand in there, so don't put it down your sink. I just throw it outside. The Splendid iridescent seaweed is not as big as like a strip of winged kelp. Like 2 weeks ago when I got all that winged kelp, it was just strips and strips and I was able to wrap it into spools. They look like spools of ribbon because it was all like wavy as well. Back to the Splendid iridescent seaweed. I rip them into smaller pieces and fit as many of them as I can on the Dehydrator trays. As for the sea lettuce, it's even smaller than the Splendid seaweed. That's a bigger piece. I got a lot of small pieces. And I'm just spreading these open and laying it flat as I can on the Dehydrator trays. I'm gonna put this first round on 105 degrees Fahrenheit. We're like 30 minutes into the dehydrating. Looks like the sea lettuce dries much faster. And the Splendid iridescent seaweed, it's thicker, so it's still pretty moist. We'll keep that going for another 30 minutes and check up on it. All right, it's been over an hour. Let's check. Whoa, that seaweed really shrinks. That's definitely dry. Yep, dry. Good. I'm gonna put the iridescent seaweed into this very tall jar that I found at a garage sale this past weekend. I was looking for something like this for seaweed, just for this occasion. Sources say that you can just eat the seaweed raw. Personally, most of this seaweed I'm gonna be cooking them and then eating them, but for the sea lettuce, I do wanna try it dehydrated. These came out really nice and thin and very soft. Wait, that one's really good. The initial flavor is what I like the most. And then it turns into that beachy flavor. My first 2-3 seconds is like the most enjoyable for me. As for the Splendid iridescent seaweed, let's try it. The texture is definitely much more rougher. Tastes like the beach. So the sea lettuce, I like the first few seconds the most. After those initial 3 seconds, I prefer the iridescent seaweed more. And here is the winged kelp. Of these 3 dried seaweeds, the winged kelp is the most pleasant to eat dehydrated like this, as is alone. The other ones, iridescent seaweed and the sea lettuce, I definitely want to add that into food. That's my personal opinion, my personal taste. And do you like seaweed in general? Whether it's in sushi or eating it roasted and salted? Let me know what's your favorite way to eat seaweed. As I was going through my harvest and rinsing them, I noticed that the isopods, they were clinging onto the sea lettuce. Didn't find any on the Splendid iridescent seaweed. I learned that this is also called rainbow leaf. And of all the seaweed I harvested this round, I found 3 isopods. Oh no, 4! I was hoping to bring them to the beach later, but I think because I put it in regular water, not salt water, they might have RIP'd. Because I don't see them moving anymore. Today we gather for Pete, Peter, Patrick, and Magnus. Give them some seaweed to take for the afterlife journey. Just got my nails done, and now let's celebrate by making seaweed butter. I mean, nails done or not, whatever happens in life, I would have made seaweed butter anyways. First things first, unsalted butter. We gotta let it soften, so let's put it on the counter. There are a couple recipes online for seaweed butter. The one I'm using today seemed to be a very simple one. Now this recipe calls for nori and dulse. The seaweed species we have are not those. I'm gonna use what I have. And we're just gonna make samples. I got the winged kelp, sea lettuce, and Splendid iridescent seaweed. So I'm gonna take 1 stick of butter, cut it into thirds, and make 3 kinds of seaweed butter. Put that to the side. It says to toast the seaweed in a hot, dry pan until crisp and aromatic. Now, this recipe doesn't specify if we're using dried seaweed or wet seaweed. So since our seaweed is already dry, let's skip that step. Maybe toasting it is a good idea though. Might add a layer of flavor. I got my winged kelp here. Toast. It's between light and dark, so like medium toastiness. 3 minutes and like 20 seconds. I think I may have burned the seaweed. Oh, it breaks my heart. Thankfully I didn't put too much on there. Could try a piece. Definitely burnt, but I like it. Hey, that could be a thing. Burnt seaweed. So some pieces are more burnt than others. The ones that are slightly burnt is really tasty. The ones that are like really burnt, a little bit strong. This time let's toast it for just 1 minute and a half. Shh. Opportunist waiting for me to drop something, as usual. This butter is taking some time to soften, so I'm gonna speed the process up by cutting it into smaller cubes. That's a third. Here's another third. Cut them down into even smaller cubes. All right, that's one area of butter. All right, 3 groups of butter complete. Whoa, looks like broccoli. All right, well, that's how it looks. Now let's taste it. Here's a piece of unsalted butter without the seaweed. There's a creaminess, but not much flavor. This is the one with the seaweed speckles. That's tasty. The winged kelp is really good with that unsalted butter. Now let's make splendid iridescent seaweed butter. All right, I toasted it and it's ready to be smashed. For whatever reason, this seaweed species is harder to powder. Also, when I was like crunching it onto the oven pan, it wouldn't crumble as easily as the winged kelp. It's definitely more labor intensive, but let's see how good it tastes with the butter. I've been grinding this for 5 minutes and am breaking out in sweat. It's turning out to be a workout. I was like, is it even worth using this for the butter? I did taste a piece, but let me taste another one with you again. It's very salty. It reminds me of ojingo. In Korea, they would dry the squid and then they'll cut it into strips and then you just chew on it. I haven't had that in a long time, but as a kid, I would have it once in a while when the adults would have it as a snack. I think that's the best we could do today. Let's add that butter. Here's how it looks now after being mixed with the butter. So some parts of the seaweed is still a bit hard, but the butter, I believe, is gonna moisten it up and make it softer. Not bad, it's just a different experience. Of the 2 butters we tried so far, I enjoyed the winged kelp butter more than the Splendid Iridescent seaweed butter, which I'm not surprised about because the winged kelp by itself I enjoy more, but I was thinking maybe I might get surprised and enjoy the Splendid Iridescent seaweed in the butter more. However, it might also depend on what type of bread you pair each of these butters with. On to the sea lettuce. I'm trying this dried sea lettuce all by itself again. It's way more flavorful than the first time I tried it like that. It's just like a boom, punch of flavor. Just toasted the sea lettuce. That fluffy, airy crispiness sounds so nice. way easier to crunch up. All right, the last group of butter. All right, here's how it looks. Let's try it. Because that seaweed has the strongest first initial flavor impact, this one tastes the strongest of all the butters in the beginning. I just toasted a butt end of my sourdough bread because that's all I have left. My butters have chilled in the fridge and now they're a little bit more solidified because they were getting liquidy from, you know, being out here, heat. This is the sea lettuce butter. So you can see the sea lettuce has a little bit more of a lighter green color. The winged kelp butter is more speckled because we're able to powder it more. As for the Splendid iridescent seaweed, we get those textures. And now let's try each piece. This is the sea lettuce butter. That is such a burst of flavor. I feel like that enhances the sourness of the sourdough. All right, cleansing the palate, onto the winged kelp butter. That one's not as intense. It's yummy. Splendid iridescent seaweed butter. The sourdough bread makes that beachy flavor more gentle. Makes it less funky, if you will. The sea lettuce butter is the most exciting of these three butters. I feel like it might be a little bit more of an acquired taste. The winged kelp butter, I think, is gonna be more likable for a larger group of people. I definitely enjoy the Splendid iridescent seaweed as a butter more than eating it alone. Overall, this experiment was a success, and I definitely will turn these seaweeds into butter again. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Toodles, my noodles.
So I had my wet basket sitting on this seaweed and it was dried before, but it got rehydrated. And right next to it, it's still very dry. It hydrates so fast.
That turned out to be quite the adventurous day. We thought we were just gonna go out there, forage some seaweed, have a little lunch, and head back home. We unexpectedly made some fuzzy little friends while grabbing ice cream. These caterpillars were on a mission. They hurried up, down, and around in circles, like they had somewhere very important to be. Then we noticed the trees right above us were covered in them. Thousands of western tent caterpillars. When they grow up, they become moths. At one point, we spotted a lone caterpillar inching right along next to a pair of mating ladybugs. Nature's tiny dramas unfolds all around us. Then we grabbed lunch, nice place. It was called Nell Thorn. So freaking delicious. Shared a lot of conversations. For more outtakes and bonus footage, check out my exclusive vlog, number 45 on Patreon. I put the link in the description box. As for my pottery journey, a bunch of my large vases have come out of the fire. I'm pretty fond of this vase that plugs into a coffee table bowl. Looks mossy. Here I am painting on luster. Those brown parts will become gold after the final firing. Also, I love how my pregnant vase turned out. The runny glaze is just, chef's kiss. For more pottery updates, follow my visual arts Instagram at Creative Chillout. For food, travel, and life, my main Instagram is at Miss Mina O. By the way, my next video just might be tropical.